My daughter brought me to visit a nursing home and left me there without my purse, my phone, or a single piece of identification. She smiled the whole way in, as if we were touring a museum. "Just a quick look, Mom," she said, fingers light on my elbow. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and boiled carrots. A television murmured a game show. Behind the glass, a woman in pink scrubs slid a clipboard toward me. "We'll need your ID," the woman said. "My daughter has it," I answered, turning to where Allison had been. She was already backing away, waving her car keys. "Parking ticket," she called, too bright. 2 minutes. 2 minutes became 5. The receptionist tried to be kind. "We can get you settled while you wait." She pointed to a chair beside a drooping plant and pushed a styrofoam cup of water into my hand. The paper sleeve scratched my palm. I kept watching the door. When Allison finally reappeared, she didn't come inside. She stood just beyond the glass, eyes shiny, lips moving. I read them easily. "Be strong." The automatic door sighed open, and she reached for me, not to hug, but to lift the strap from my shoulder. "Let me hold your bag," she said quietly. "You don't need to carry all that." "Allison," I said, keeping my voice level, "give me my phone." "It's safer with me," she replied. She kissed my cheek like a nurse soothing a child, then stepped backward, 1, 2, 3 steps, before turning and walking fast. The door hissed shut. I watched my daughter, my careful girl who once saved her allowance to buy me garden gloves, climb into her car and pull away, as if the building itself had swallowed me. "Ma'am," the receptionist's voice gentled. "We'll help you get comfortable." I set the cup down. My hands were cool. "I'm not staying." "We have your file," she said, tapping the clipboard. "Your daughter completed the intake." "Without me," I replied, and the words rang like a spoon against glass. How could my own daughter decide I was done with my life? I noticed then what she hadn't. She'd taken my purse, but not my jacket. In the inside pocket, my old habit waited. A folded list of numbers and names, a key taped flat as a bandage, and one business card with a phone etched in ink I chose myself. Little did they know I had been preparing ever since I saw the first missing mail, the first quiet meeting at my bank, the first time someone called my memory sweet. "Ma'am," the receptionist said again. "I'll be fine," I told her, "and they won't be." The lobby door sighed shut behind my daughter, and for a moment, I could hear nothing but the steady tick of a wall clock and the thin laugh track from the TV in the corner. A man in a cardigan shuffled past with a walker. He paused, looked at me as if I might be new, then drifted on. 2 helium balloons nudged the ceiling, strings tangled, their printed smiles turned sideways. I set the paper cup of water on the table and smoothed the jacket over my knees. My jacket. She had taken the purse and the phone. She had left more than she knew. I reached into the inside pocket and felt the small rectangle of cardstock, the familiar indentation where I'd pressed my pen too hard when I wrote the number. Under it, the key lay flat under a strip of tape. A habit as old as my marriage, important things tucked where helpful hands wouldn't find them. A woman at the desk lifted her head and said my first name like a friend. It startled me, that small theft. The intake form lay on the counter with its tidy blanks filled. Someone else had already told my story. "Ma'am," she asked, "do you need help?" "I'm expected at my doctor's office at 2, I said. "I need to make a call." Her smile tightened. "Your daughter said—" "She said many things," I replied gently. "Please." The phone, perhaps it was the way I said please, or the way I folded my hands on the counter as if I knew what I was doing, which I did. She slid the handset toward me and turned it so the cord didn't tangle. I dialed the number by memory first, and then by the ink on the card when my finger hesitated. It rang once, twice. "Keen Law," a woman answered. "How can I direct—" "This is Margaret Holt," I said. "Put me through to Mr. Keene." A click, a pause, the warm rustle of someone coming on the line. "Mrs. Holt," came his steady baritone. "How are we?" "We?" I said, glancing at the glass door where sun struck the metal frame like a mark on a sundial. Are in a lobby. Are we, Mo? He said dryly. In a voluntary lobby? For the next 90 seconds, I said. He exhaled once. Is Allison with you? Parking, I said. 2 minutes. All right, he said, his voice changing gear like a reliable engine. You're not required to stay. You've been examined, you're competent, and you've executed the documents we discussed. Ask to speak with the administrator. If anyone questions you, hand the phone to them. Don't argue, don't explain. I'll call the facility as well. Where can you go? Home, I said. He hesitated. Is that safe? It's mine, I replied. For now. Taxi? A ride, I said. I'll arrange it. Call me again once you're in the car, he said. And, Margaret, don't sign anything, not even a coffee receipt. Mr. Keene, I said, I do still make my own coffee. I handed the phone back to the receptionist before she could ask who I'd called. Your administrator, please, I said. I'm sure we can all work this out, she began. So am I said, and smiled in a way that dared her to test it. She rose and disappeared down a hall lined with corkboards announcing craft schedules and fall festivals. While she was gone, a nurse in soft shoes came with a blanket. You must be chilled, she said, draping it over my knees. Her kindness was a relief and an ache both. It would have been easy to let it wrap me like an explanation. I stood, folded the blanket, placed it neatly on the chair. When the administrator arrived, I introduced myself by first and last name, looking him in the eyes like I had looked at bank managers for 37 years. I explained that I hadn't consented to admission. I asked for their visitor log to show when I'd arrived. I handed him the handset with Mr. Keene on the line. The administrator listened, nodded once, twice, then put the phone on his shoulder and told the desk, "Please document that Mrs. Holt is not being admitted." They wrote it down. That mattered. Paper cuts both ways. I asked to use the restroom. Inside, I leaned against the locked door for a count of 20 and took the key, from my jacket. It was small, brass, notched in a pattern I knew without looking. Bank box. In my mind, I saw the narrow room, the chilled hum of the vault, the way the attendant slid the drawer onto the table. Papering the walls of my memory were other images. Allison at my kitchen table making me laugh with her bad impressions. Allison, 14, scolding herself in the mirror for crying at a school concert. Allison asking me once after her son was born if I thought she would be a good mother. You will, I had said, and meant it. I had not, until 2 months ago, considered that love had other weather patterns. When I came out, the receptionist was hanging up the phone and avoiding my eyes, the way people do when they're embarrassed on your behalf. Your daughter left, she said. I know, I said. Where's the nearest exit that leads to a taxi stand? She blinked. There's one by the east door. Thank you, I said. You've been very kind. It isn't right, what she did, she said suddenly, a flush rising. It isn't what we do here. People do difficult things for reasons that feel right to them at the time, I said. That doesn't make me less awake. I walked out into the bright rectangle of afternoon. I asked the first woman in a volunteer vest if I could borrow her phone for a quick call to a neighbor with a spare key. I dialed a different number this time, Margot's landline. She picked up on the second ring, her voice like gravel and wind chimes. I was waiting for this call, she said. Tell me where. I slid into her car 20 minutes later, the air conditioner rattling like a promise. Margot had been my neighbor for 28 years. We swapped soups and kept watch in winter. She parked 2 blocks from the house in case Allison had circled back. You okay? She asked, not looking at me yet. I'm angry, I said. And I am not done. That's you okay? She said and patted my knee once. Inside, I moved like a woman unpacking groceries. Quiet, efficient. I went first to the desk in the sunroom where I kept a file that said garden in looping pencil. Inside were documents that had nothing to do with roses. In the week after my husband's funeral, when the cards still came in a blush of envelopes and the casseroles crowded my freezer, I had discovered that grief was a fog people expected you to live inside. It made them feel useful to lead you around in it. It made it easier to move things around without being seen. My daughter had moved my pills into a day-of-the-week box I didn't ask for, my mail into a plastic tray she called Mom's paperwork, my words into softened shapes, confused, overwhelmed, adjusting. When she came over, she did it with casseroles and unasked-for cleaning, as if scrubbing a stovetop could erase the shape of my husband at the window. What she didn't know, because I didn't tell her, was that I'd also been moving things. The house had been retitled into the Holt Family Trust. The trust named me as trustee, and my granddaughter Emma, steady, quiet Emma, as successor. The will had been updated a week later. Powers of attorney had been revoked and re-executed like a dance I learned by accounting. All of it sat in simple manila folders, labeled with words so dull Allison had stopped opening them. She had told herself that anything important would have a shiny cover. I took the trust binder to the dining table. I laid out the capacity letter from Dr. Rivera, a geriatrician with hands that never rushed. She had asked me hard questions and watched my eyes while I answered them. She gave me paper that said what I already knew. I could tell time and a money and the truth. I retrieved copies of my signature the way the bank had it on file. I took out the list of every institution where my name appeared and checked dates and contact names like a grocery list. Then I went to my bedroom and opened the lockbox at the back of my closet and counted the cash I'd deliberately withdrawn over months of forgetfulness in some small enough not to flag software. Not because I planned to run. My running days were literal and not recent, but because cash is a kind of freedom that doesn't require a charger. The phone rang once, twice. Margot answered and looked down the hall. "It's Mr. Keene," she called. "How far did you get?" he asked when I picked up. "Home." "Good," he said, and I heard the paper shuffle that meant he was hunting for a pen. "While you were in transit, I called the bank's fraud department. They already had you flagged. Did you know someone tried to access your safe deposit box yesterday?" I closed my eyes. "Who?" "According to the guard's notes, a man identifying himself as your son-in-law. The staff turned him away. The signature card didn't match, and your standing instructions forbid anyone but you and me." "What else?" "You have a guardianship petition filed ex parte for Tuesday. They cite progressive memory decline and unmanaged grief. They attach a letter signed by a physician assistant you saw once last winter for a cough." He paused. "You'll want to see the affidavits. They are colorful. I felt the old heat rise, the one that took me through labor and late bills and my husband's cancer treatments with a politeness that cut. "Colorful," I repeated. "We will need a palette." "I'll file a response today," he said. "And a motion to sanction for bad faith. Also, Margaret, there's one more thing. I found a lien filed in March, a home equity line of credit. The application bears your name and a notary stamp. Did you sign anything like that?" "No," I said, and a word that wasn't polite almost climbed my throat. "Who's the notary?" He read the name. It rang nothing in my mind. "Affiliated with a mobile service? The witness signature is a C. Pierce. Your son-in-law is Christopher Pierce, is he not?" "Yes," I said softly. "He is." He exhaled through his nose. "I'll request the notary log and the video from the UPS store where the notarization was supposedly performed. If it's forged, we'll refer it to the state." "Do that," I said. "Are you alone?" "Margot's here." "Good. Don't answer the door except for me or an officer. Change the code on your garage keypad. Call your pharmacy and your post office." "How many fires are you planning to fight at once?" I asked. "As many as your children set," he said. "And, Margaret, I know this is civil, but don't underestimate the criminal appetite." "I won't," I said. "I underestimated something else." "What's that?" "How much courage I had left," I said, and we were both quiet for a heartbeat. I did what needed to be done next because that is how you keep your heart from pounding a hole in your ribs. I called the bank and froze online access. I told the manager, who had known me since he was 25 and wore his tie too tight, that I would be in to examine the lien. He said he was sorry, and I could hear that he meant it. I called the post office and asked them to hold my mail for pickup. I called the pharmacy and switched my prescriptions to in-store pickup only. I changed the locks because I owed myself the sound of a bolt sliding home. When the locksmith finished, I asked him to install a simple chain on the inside of the front door. He looked puzzled. "You want a chain?" "I want a small pause between a knock and a mistake," I said. That night, I slept in my own bed. In the small hours, I got up and went to the window. The street was a ribbon of darker dark. My husband had stood here in winter to check for ice. It occurred to me then that Allison might believe she was saving me. It occurred to me she might believe that fear made her kind, but fear dressed in control is a costume no child should wear to mother their mother. In the morning, I put on slacks and a plain blouse and walked into the bank at 9 minutes past opening. The manager, Evan, came from behind his desk as if I might fall. I did not. He led me to a small conference room with a door that closed soft. "You know I can't tell you everything until we complete the investigation," he said, palms up and empty. "But I can tell you the broad strokes." "Paint them," I said. He described the HELOC application, my name, my address, my income rounded down to justify a larger need, the signature that slanted as if my hand had been held. The notary stamp belonged to a woman licensed 3 counties over. The witness signature was C. Pierce. The draw came through in 2 chunks, both transferred to an account in Allison's name, marked household. The bank's fraud unit flagged it because of the notary's irregularities and because the application had been submitted from an IP address associated with Pierce Home Improvements, Chris's company. 2 chunks were scheduled. We froze it before the second cleared, he said. "No funds are actually dispersed to any vendor. You won't be responsible for repayment. You'll pursue a hole in your system," I said. "I'll pursue the rest." He had the grace to look ashamed and the sense to look relieved. Before I left, he took my updated signature and put a note on my profile that an attorney was now on my account and that I was to be called personally for any requests that changed my access. At noon, Mr. Keene brought me the guardianship petition. It was a curious thing to read a description of your decline as if you were someone's school project. Margaret is often tearful. Margaret leaves burners on. Margaret repeats questions. Margaret forgot the name of her grandson's teacher. Margaret misplaced checks. Underneath, tender as mold, bloomed the suggestion that my husband's death had unmoored me so completely I might wander into traffic. I smiled when I reached the paragraph where Allison wrote, "Mother has always been trusting." I had not always been trusting. I had simply preferred to let love answer questions I should have insisted on asking. Mr. Keene slid me a legal pad. "Write your narrative," he said. "Dates, names, what they said. Keep it clean." I wrote for 2 hours the way I fold laundry, simple in stacks. I noted the day Allison borrowed my spare house key to make an extra copy and returned it warm from her pocket. I noted the day my mail stopped arriving and the carrier told me someone named Pierce had requested a hold for my address. I noted the day Evan called to apologize for the confusion when a young teller allowed my daughter to help me with a withdrawal by standing too close and answering questions intended for me. I noted the day I opened a drawer and found an empty checkbook where a full one had been. Throughout, I noted Allison's voice, soft, earnest, always just trying to help. I could hear her even as I inked the words. We filed our response that afternoon with Dr. Rivera's letter, my own affidavit, and the trust documents. Mr. Keene asked the court for an expedited hearing, sanctions for abuse of process, and a referral to Adult Protective Services for investigation, not of me, but of the daughter and the son-in-law who had tried to make my competence into currency. They came to my door the next day, right on cue, as if a director had called action. Allison stood on the porch with a Tupperware and a smile trembling at its edges. Chris stayed 2 steps back, hands in the pockets of a jacket too expensive for October. "Mom," Allison said, lifting the container, Chicken tetrazzini. You always thought the cream of mushroom was the secret, I said, stepping into the doorway so they couldn't. She laughed in relief. So you do remember. I remember a great many things, I said, including the difference between a visit and an ambush. She flinched, then straightened. We're worried about you. I think you're worried about a problem you don't want to say out loud in your own house, I said, looking at Chris. He smiled with his mouth and not his eyes. We took out the line to fix your roof, Margaret. We told the bank that my roof was not leaking, I said. Your business was. He looked past me into my hallway as if there might be a leak in there he could point to. We'll pay it back. You won't, I said, because it wasn't yours to take. Allison's eyes filled the way they did when she was 8 and brought me a broken snow globe. I made a mistake, she said. You wanted to solve a problem without telling me what it was, I said quietly. You wanted to take it out of my hands because you were afraid I'd say no? She swallowed and looked down. We were afraid you'd say no. Then you were right, I said. Chris stepped forward. This doesn't have to be ugly, he said. We can make this go away. You rescind the trust. You sign the POA. We'll handle it. Christopher, I said, keeping my voice level so the words would land, I don't need to be handled. I let them stand there another moment to understand that the map in their heads no longer matched the terrain. Then I told them I had filed with the court. I told them they could expect a call from APS. I told them the bank had frozen the fraudulent line and had their IP address. I did not mention the notary camera. I did not mention Margot's grandson, who worked at the UPS store and had printed the log that showed no Margaret Holt had appeared that day. I did not mention the footage of Chris on the security feed the week of the notarization, the way he had stood with his head down, cap low, while a notary stamped paper without asking for an ID. I did not mention the email Mr. Keene had already sent to the Secretary of State asking for the notary's commission to be reviewed. Allison put the Tupperware on the porch railing and stared at it as if it might begin to explain her. Mom, she whispered. Please? Please what? I asked. Please let us help, she said. Then stop, I replied. They left as people do who have been surprised by a door that doesn't open. The Tupperware sweated on the railing. I fed the casserole to Margot and myself and then to the dog next door who would eat anything. Grief, it turns out, can be ladled into good china and still taste like salt. On Tuesday, I sat in a courtroom that smelled faintly of dust and ink and listened to my daughter describe me as if she were auditioning for the part of dutiful child. Chris sat beside her and wore contrition like a necktie. Mr. Keene asked permission to cross-examine. He didn't force. He walked. Mrs. Pierce, he said, who requested the mail hold for your mother's address? Allison's hands tightened on the strap of her bag. I did, she said. To help? Did your mother ask you to? I thought. Did she ask? No. Who signed the HELOC application? I don't know, she said, looking at Chris. Chris handled the paper. And the notarization? Chris said the notary came to the house, she said, and I knew then that the lie had a twin. They had rehearsed different versions for different rooms. The notary's log shows no such visit, Mr. Keene said mildly. The UPS store footage shows your husband at the counter at 2:17 on March 12th. The notary stamped papers without verifying identification. We'll handle that separately. For now, we ask the court to deny the petition with prejudice and refer the affidavits for investigation. Chris's jaw clenched like a fist. The judge, a woman not much younger than me, took her time, which is its own kind of mercy. She read Dr. Rivera's letter and then read parts aloud. Competent, orientated, independent in all activities of daily living, insight intact. She read the trust's date stamp. She read the clause that barred any successor trustee from acting until I became unable or unwilling. She looked at me long enough to make me feel seen, and then at my daughter long enough to make her feel it. Petition denied, she said finally, her voice not unkind. Sanctions reserved pending investigation. Mrs. Holt, your autonomy is affirmed. Mrs. Pierce, Mr. Pierce, I advise you to obtain counsel. Outside the courtroom, Allison reached for me and then let her hand fall. "You could have told me," she said. "I did," I said softly. "For years. In ways you didn't find urgent." She closed her eyes. "We were drowning." "You tried to stand on my shoulders to breathe," I said. "You could have asked me to build you a dock." She looked at Chris as if she could catch a new story from his face, then back at me. "Are you going to cut me off?" "I don't know," I said. "I know I'm going to protect myself, and I know your son needs parents who don't mistake theft for love." Something in her face cracked then. I had to turn away, or I would have taken it back, the way mothers take back hard truths to keep their babies from wincing. Margot tugged my elbow. "Come on," she murmured. "You did right." 2 weeks later, the notary license was suspended pending investigation. The bank referred the forgery to the district attorney. Chris's business lost 2 contracts when the city procurement officer read the ethics memo Mr. Keene had drafted. Allison called to say she was staying with a friend. "He says you ruined him," she whispered. "Chris ruined Chris," I said. I refused to be quiet. "Can I come over?" she asked. "Not today," I said, and it hurt down to the soft part of my bones. "We need rules first." I set them out for her like a recipe card. She could call on Tuesdays at 6. She could visit on Sundays at 2 if she came alone and left her apology at the door in exchange for honesty at the table. There would be no talk of money, no talk of keeping me safe, and especially no talk of moving or downsizing until I raised it. She listened, wrote them down. It felt like teaching her to tie her shoes again, loop, swoop, pull. Except this time, I had to tell her to leave the laces on her own feet. Meanwhile, I worked. It steadied me. I rolled my retirement accounts from the bank that had not caught a forgery fast enough to a credit union where the manager looked me in the eye and said, "We'll assign a code word." Don't tell anyone, not even family. I updated beneficiaries and put bequests into trust forms that couldn't be changed at a kitchen table. I replaced my front door camera with one that saved to the cloud and showed me anyone who tried to help when I wasn't home. I joined a group at the community center that met on Wednesdays to talk about elder scams and how to shut the door. I told them my story. Women nodded with their whole bodies. We practiced saying no out loud in a room that didn't judge. No can be a tool that makes your palms sweat. It gets easier. And then, because revenge is more satisfying when it has an ending that teaches, I wrote a letter. It was to my grandson, Daniel, 10, and Ernest, whose artwork had been on my fridge the day the papers appeared. I told him that love sometimes looks like rules. I told him that helping someone starts with asking them what help they want. I told him that people who take what isn't theirs get small even as their houses get bigger. I wrote that letter for him and for the version of Allison who once was, and for the version of me who had believed that forgetful was a gentle word. Chris avoided charges by agreeing to restitution to the bank and by surrendering any claim, now or in the future, to my assets. He signed an agreement written so clearly a child could read it. No contact, no requests, no visits. Allison signed a separate one that laid out steps like flagstones, therapy, financial counseling, a year of distance. She cried. I cried. We folded the papers and put them in different drawers so we wouldn't pull them out every time we hurt. In spring, I sold the house, not because anyone told me to, because I wanted to. Too many doorways had ghosts. I bought a small place with a courtyard and a lemon tree. The first night there, I brought in the last box and stood very still and listened to the new quiet. It sounded like my name when I say it to myself with respect. Allison came to see me on a Sunday in June, nearly 8 months after the day of the lobby. She sat at the metal table under the lemon tree and folded her hands like a penitent, and then like a fighter, and then like a girl who didn't know what to do with them. "I went to 3 meetings this week," she said. "Debt, family, adult children of, well, it doesn't matter. I'm learning. I'm glad," I said. "I told them what I did," she said. "They asked me why." "And what did you say?" She looked at the leaves trembling slightly in the heat. "Because if I lost you," she said, "I thought I would lose the part of me that is good." And so I tried to hold on so tight, I almost strangled you. That's an explanation, I said gently, not an excuse. I know, she said. I'm not asking you to be different anymore. I'm asking if I can be better. I poured us iced tea from a sweating pitcher and handed her a glass and watched her take small sips as if there were rules for drinking. We talked about her son and his science fair project. And we talked about my neighbor's new dog and how it howled at sirens like an opera fan. And we did not talk about guardianship or notaries or banks. When she stood to leave, she faltered. Am I still in your will? She asked, and then winced like she'd stepped on a nail. I shouldn't ask. It's my will, I said. I will what I want. You are in it, but not alone. Emma is the trustee. I trust her to trust me. She nodded, eyes wet. I understand. I walked her to the gate. On the way out, she paused by the lemon tree and breathed in the sharpness. I always loved this smell, she said. It reminds me of your kitchen. It reminds me, I said, that sour turns sweet if you wait. After she was gone, I went inside and sat with my feet up and my glass sweating a ring on the coaster. I thought of that first day in the lobby. I thought of the volunteer's phone warm against my ear and the way the administrator had blinked when I said my full name like an answer. Revenge is not always a dramatic flourish. Sometimes it is paperwork done right. Sometimes it is a chain on a door and a trust filed and a voice steady in a courtroom. Sometimes, if you can manage it, revenge is also refusing to be made cruel by people who treated you like a problem to be solved. When I tell this story to the women at the community center, I begin with the sentence that keeps their backs straighter in their chairs. My daughter left me in a nursing home lobby without my bag, and I walked out. Then I tell them the rest, the part that matters to the part of them that is tired. I wrote my name. I kept it. I made sure the next time someone asked for it, they had to earn it. And if they ask me, how could your own daughter do this to you? I answer their question gently with another. How many of us have tried to manage a future we are afraid of by taking today out of someone else's hands? It sits with them then, the way truth does, warm and heavy and useful. We practice saying no. We practice saying yes. We practice saying our names in full like a lock that clicks. There's a photograph on my new mantle of my husband in a chair by a window, light on his cheek, a book in his lap. Next to it is a picture of Allison at 8, gap-toothed and fierce. Between them sits the lemon I cut this afternoon, its skin bright, its juice tart in the best way. I think of all the doors love knocks and all the doors fear tries to kick in. I think of mine and the chain I had installed, flimsy in a hardware catalog, strong enough in a moment to buy me a breath. That breath became a phone call. That call became a paper. That paper became a map back to my own life. When the phone rings now, I check the ID and answer or don't. When the doorbell goes, I look, and if it's a girl selling cookies, I buy too many. If it's trouble dressed as help, I let it ring. My heart still hurts sometimes when I see a blue sedan that looks like Allison's turn the corner and then glide past. But hurt is not a summons. Love, I've learned, doesn't require surrender of the self to prove it's real. I keep the key in my jacket still. Old habit more than need. The card with Mr. Keen's number is in my drawer. The trust is in its binder under a plain label that would bore a thief to a nap. On Tuesdays, the phone rings at 6. We talk. On Sundays, I make tea and set out 2 glasses just in case. This is how it happened. This is how it ends for now. Not with a slammed door, but with doors I lock and doors I open, and the knowledge that the next time someone tries to slide a pen across my table, the only thing I'll sign is my name, which is mine, which I'll keep.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.